And joining us now is Congressman Jason Crow. He's a Democrat from Colorado and a member of the House Armed Services Committee. He served a combat tour of duty in Iraq with the 82nd Airborne Division, earning a Bronze Star. He also served 2 combat tours in Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. Congressman Crow, your reaction to where things seem to stand at this moment, the President of the United States saying all is well, so far so good. It seems reasonable to interpret that as possibly no American casualties.
Well, first off, Lawrence, let's take a step back and actually think about what's happening at these bases. I've been at many of these bases, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been on the receiving end of rocket and mortar attacks. I know what it's like to be at a base when these types of things are happening. They're terrifying. You know, the soldiers, the troops that are at these bases are under attack right now. They're scared. Their families are scared. You know, what happens when these attacks happen is the commanders shut off the phones, they shut off the internet access, and the families back home are on pins and needles waiting for good word or news from the command structure, from the military, that all is well. And for the president to circumvent that and say that, you know, the battle damage assessments are ongoing, they haven't been completed yet, but all is well in his estimation, you know, really shows that he doesn't understand what's going through the minds of these troops right now.
Talk about that. Talk about what it's like for the families tonight who are wondering what has happened. Do they have a way of getting this information before the news media does?
Well, that's the idea, and that's why we have processes in place to make sure that, you know, they shut off internet, they shut off phones, that if there are any casualties or any problems, that the families get word of it first. That needs to happen. And for the president to go outside of that process and just start tweeting things before that assessment is even done is really, again, a terrible circumvention of the command structure and the way that we've set this up to really protect families and protect troops in situations like this.
And in your experience, how long does it take to get this full casualty assessment?
You know, it really depends on the situation. You know, the size of the area hit, what types of weapons were used. You know, I can't really say in this instance. But for the president to say all is well, when I've received reports that there might be Iraqi casualties, these are people that are living and working and fighting at the bases with us. Our coalition partners may have suffered casualties. There's also a disregard for our partners in this situation. So, again, I don't think he really comprehends, nor does he seem to care. The impact of the troops on this in this region, and the focus must continue to be on the protection of these soldiers. You know, the next 24 to 48 hours, you know, we need information in Congress that the administration is taking measures to actually respond to this and put resources in place to protect these folks.
What is the future for the American military in Iraq? You have the parliament voting to expel them.
Well, this is one of the many byproducts of what I believe was a very impulsive decision to kill General Soleimani. There's no doubt in my mind that General Soleimani was a bad guy. He's a bad actor. But we don't go around shooting missiles at all of the bad actors out there because there are consequences of doing it. You know, General Soleimani has been spending the better part of the last 2 decades trying to drive U.S. forces from Iraq. You know, that is one of Iran's primary goals here, is to remove U.S. forces from the region, because they know if they can accomplish that they will have relatively unchecked power in the region. And if through our impulsive actions, through the president not consulting with our allies, not consulting with Iraq, our partners on the ground, and violating their sovereignty by conducting an attack not only in the country without their notification, but in their capital, if that ultimately drives us out of Iraq and achieves Iran goals, we will be less safe, Iraq will be less safe, and all of our partners in the region will be less safe as a result of it.
If you can get a briefing from the Trump Defense Department, Trump administration tomorrow, what would you want to know? What would you be asking?
Well, the first concern is what are they doing to make sure that our troops are safe? You know, do we have the resources in place? Have removed the rapid response forces up forward in the operating area quickly enough and sufficiently enough to accomplish that? I've been concerned for many months since I took my last trip to the region in October about our protection for unmanned drones. You know, we have severe risks for aerial drones. Iran has a very aggressive drone technology. They've been doing surveillance over our forward operating bases. We have to make sure that we have things in place to protect our troops going forward. The second is, what are we doing to engage with Iraq? We have to make sure that we're addressing their political concerns, engaging with the leadership, both military and political, in Baghdad to make sure that we are not going to be expelled from that region, because our counter-ISIS mission relies on our presence there, and we're not in a place where we can pull out because that mission is not done. And then the third is, how are we going to de-escalate the situation with Iran? As your prior guest indicated, this is an opportunity for us to take a step back and say there's a better way. There's something in combat called a tactical pause, because combat situations have their own inertia. They will just go on, and sides will respond to each other in a tit-for-tat type of fashion. Now's an opportunity for us to take a step back, take that tactical pause and say, is this an opportunity now for us to come to the table and figure out a diplomatic way of solving this?
Congressman Jason Crow, thank you very much for lending your voice to our discussion tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.